New documents that Republicans are seeking to have declassified might be the most damning yet, that show that the FBI and people in the DOJ acted in a corrupt manner in getting a FISA warrant on people connected to Trump. This is according to an article by John Solomon of The Hill. Now, first, let me say the caveat that Solomon's citing sources that he doesn't name, and as always, we should take that with a huge grain of salt. However, I think Solomon's been pretty good on this, and it's still worth discussing. So if this report is true, what he's saying is this, that there are emails that are being asked to be declassified that apparently show that Comey, other people involved in the case at the FBI, and people at the DOJ are emailing each other back and forth saying that they know Christopher Steele, who is the person that was paid for by an intermediary by Hillary Clinton to get, a former British spy, no less, to get dirt on Trump from Russians and other sources. But that there were problems, and he put together this dossier. And so these emails, apparently between FBI agents, Comey, and DOJ people, show that they knew that there were problems with credibility of the information contained in this dossier. That's a huge deal because this dossier was the number one piece of evidence, and in fact the key piece of evidence in getting a warrant to spy on Carter Page and wiretap him. Carter Page was someone who was in the Trump campaign. By being able to spy on him, they were able to get all the communications he ever had with the Trump campaign and then branch out further from there and see all of these communications Trump campaign had within itself. In other words, spying on the Trump campaign using information that was provided for by Hillary's campaign, paid for by Hillary's campaign. Now, it's bad enough that we already know that there was kind of this circular effect where you had people like Cindy Blumenthal that were connected to Hillary that are talking to people at the DOJ, that are talking to people at the FBI. And so you have this circular kind of situation going on where the Hillary's people are involved in the investigation into Trump's people, or at least knowledgeable of it and getting the facts of it. And the evidence that they're paying for is being used as the crucial linchpin to be able to do this spying, which is terrible in its own right. But in order to go to this FISA court to spy on an American citizen, the FBI, the rules, even though I've said before, I think the FISA court's a joke. They rubber stamp 99.7% of all requests that they get. So that proves that it's a joke and it needs to be dealt with. But aside from that, in this specific instance, the FBI, as in the general rule, is expected to tell the truth, or any agency going to the FISA court is expected to tell these judges the truth. So they say, here are the facts as we see them. Judge, we'd like to spy on this American citizen. And the judge reviews that theoretically and says, okay, the FBI is not allowed to withhold evidence that might show that actually that person isn't a spy, and in this case, Carter Page, and shouldn't be spied on. One crucial piece of evidence would be, hey, the big piece of evidence we're handing to you, this dossier by Christopher Steele, we have serious questions about its credibility. That's damning. That proves if the FBI had these concerns and they didn't disclose them to the FISA court, that they engaged in corruption. Period. And that would be a huge bombshell, particularly if people as high up as Comey had these concerns. That means that they're intentionally submitting evidence that they know that they have significant questions about in order to violate the rights of an American citizen. And not just any American citizen, in order to spy on a campaign running for president that they don't care for. Because we know that people in the intelligence community, such as Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Strzok, that was really high up in the investigation, hated Trump and wanted Hillary to win. That's damning. Also, what happened is these email exchanges that are seeking to be declassified apparently also show that Comey, DOJ members, and high-ranking FBI members were discussing that they knew Christopher Steele, again, the person who created this dossier, was actually in communications with the media. Now, eventually, Christopher Steele would be fired by the FBI for having communication to the media, but not until after they used his dossier as a reason to wiretap Carter Page and people connected to the Trump campaign. So if they knew beforehand that he was breaking the rules and was communicating with the media, that's something that should have been disclosed to the FISA court. Now you might say, well, that's not a big deal. But the reason it's a big deal is we know that one of the things that were used to buttress the claims of the dossier by the FBI to the FISA court was a Yahoo News article that basically made the same accusations that the Steele dossier was making. So in other words, you're presenting this evidence to a court, and one, you know that the evidence might not be credible, which is terrible enough. But even beyond that, let's say, you want to provide other evidence to the judge that this evidence might be credible. So you say, here's this dossier we got from this guy that shows that there could be criminal wrongdoing going. And to buttress this, here's an independent investigation from a news outlet that also came to the same conclusion. That means that it's not just one person saying it's smoke, it's at least two separate investigations. Now, this is garbage because we know the source of the Yahoo News article was Christopher Steele. So this is kind of called circular. It's circular justification for being able to provide evidence. In other words, this is a trick that you're not allowed to do, but that law enforcement could do, and it would be very shady and corrupt, where you say, here's a piece of evidence, and here's someone who could verify that evidence. But in reality, the person verifying the evidence is just verifying it using the exact same source that the first piece of evidence came from. I know this all sounds very confusing, so let me try to put it in like a simple stance. Let's say I think that my neighbor stole something from me, so I go to the police, and the police have my report that's like, here's Rob saying why the neighbor stole something. And then they also say, oh, and here's a second person saying that the neighbor did everything that Rob's saying. But in reality, the second person didn't see anything. They just talked to me, and I said, hey, I saw the neighbor speeding out. And that's ridiculous, because now the judge thinks, oh, it's not just the aggrieved, it's not just this one group saying that a crime was committed, giving the details. There's a second independent group. That gives more veracity to the claims being made by the first group. Now, if the FBI knew that Christopher Steele was talking to the media, that means they had a pretty damn good idea that the media that they were using to back up Christopher Steele's claims probably talked to Christopher Steele, and that's where they got their information. Or at the very least, before using the Yahoo News article written by Michael Isikoff, they should have contacted Isikoff. Isikoff has since said when he found out his article was used, I got this information from Christopher Steele. So had the FBI gone to him and said, look, we know Steele's been talking to the media. Where did you get this information? Did you get it from Christopher Steele? He most likely would have said yes, and a non-corrupt FBI would have said, okay, well then we can't use this news article to back up the claims. Now, just in general, by the way, why in God's name are FISA courts accepting news articles as proof of anything? That's ridiculous anyways. These aren't professional investigators, so they're new. They shouldn't be involved any way whatsoever. But it's even doubly wrong for them to act as if they're independent verification, when in reality their source is the exact same source that the FBI is providing. So two things possibly shown in these emails. Now keep in mind who it was sending these emails. These are high-ranking. It says DOJ, FBI officials, including James Comey. So they're emailing each other back and forth a couple weeks before the FISA warrant. And supposedly these emails are saying two things of note. First, what I was just talking about. Hey, we think Christopher Steele's talking to the media. Ooh, that's not good. That's really bad. Oh, well, we'll just ignore that when we tell the FISA court that he's this super credible person, and when we use media outlets to back up his research. That's terribly corrupt on its own right. The second thing that's even more damning. They're sitting there talking to each other going, geez, we have some serious credibility problems with this dossier. We can't verify the claims that are being made in it. It is up to the FBI to verify these claims before they submit them to the FISA court as a reason to wiretap. Keep in mind what this means. Take Trump out of it. Take politics out of it. You, as an American citizen, have like the right to privacy. Your government can't spy on you like this unless they get a special warrant from this FISA court. Now, say that from now on, in order to get a warrant against you, there doesn't need to be proof of anything. All there needs to be is someone to write some salacious document about you that includes hookers peeing on beds that you're watching, all kinds of crazy stuff. Stuff that just out of face, you're like, what? None of this makes sense. And that's enough to be able to spy on you. None of those claims have to be verified. All it takes is one person that doesn't like you to say, hey, I heard this person's breaking the law. I heard they like hookers peeing on beds, so we should spy on them to make sure they're not a spy for Russia. That's it. That's all it would take. Of course, that's absurd. We should expect the FBI to be like, okay, we've received these accusations. Now we are going to verify these accusations before we start spying on American citizens. That's how the process is supposed to work. Even take it down to just your local law enforcement. You wouldn't want them to be able to get warrants to come and search your house and to spy on everything in your house based merely on unproven accusations by someone who doesn't like you. Hey, I heard the guy next street's a crackhead and he likes hookers peeing on the bed and he broke all kinds of law. Police are like, cool, let's get a warrant. Let's investigate all of his accounts. Let's go through all of his emails just to make sure. That's not the way that law enforcement's supposed to work. And it's even more egregious when you consider the level that we're talking. This was the intelligence agencies ran by one party, Barack Obama, attacking and going after his opponent, Donald Trump, who was running as a Republican. That's what we're talking about. And going after people connected to him so that they could spy on that campaign. That is outrageous and proves corruption. If these emails actually exist, that would be damning. But of course, as my last video I showed, there are many people on the left that will say, it doesn't matter. Trump's a bad guy. Hillary's a good guy. Yeah, Mueller and Comey are decent people, so it was all right. No, it's not. Again, I say for like the millionth time, I don't care as much about Trump or Hillary. I'm not one of these people chanting lock her up. That's not where I'm coming from. If either of them committed crimes, they should be held accountable for them. As I say over and over. But I'm more concerned with the corrupt intelligence agencies and investigative agencies. This proves that, are you really comfortable? And the people that are okay with this, again, I ask you, will you be okay in 2020 when Trump gets, let's say he's running against Beto O'Rourke, where Trump pays some foreign spy to talk to Chinese people, Chinese government members, right? And they say, yeah, Beto O'Rourke's actually dealing with it. People connected to him are actually corrupt. They're dealing with this. And that's used as a reason to spy against Beto O'Rourke's campaign and have an over 2-year-long investigation into him, charging crimes that, by the way, crimes that Trump people are allowed to get off. The FBI will allow them to get off with, like lying to the FBI. But we'll charge people in Beto's campaign with lying to Congress, lying to the FBI, all sorts of things that the same people charging them will leave people connected to Trump off the hook for. Will you really be okay with that? Of course you won't. People are, like, I encourage you, don't be clouded by the fact that you hate Trump. Who cares? Who cares if Trump's a crappy person? That doesn't justify sacrificing your integrity and justifying corruption by these intel agencies that'll be there long after Trump. If you justify this weapon against Trump and this corruption, you are thereby giving your opponent someday that will get power the justification for using that power against people that you support. So, yeah, if these emails should be declassified like all the other information that went into getting the FISA warrant. And if they do show that Comey and people at the FBI and DOJ were not sure of the credibility of Steele and knew that he was talking to the media, to me, that's utterly damning. All the more reason that we need a serious investigation into the investigators. If you like this video, like and subscribe. I'll have more coming out later today. Also, tomorrow at noon, I'll be doing a live stream. And yeah, have a good one.